Break with Rachel V. Hill, taking a daily look at the biggest stories in Denver sports and interacting live with you, the Coffee Break fam. So sit back, relax, grab a cup of joe, and enjoy your coffee break. Here's your host, Rachel V. Hill.
Are the Denver Broncos giving us mixed signals ahead of the NFL draft? It sure seems to feel like that. And on this very it's a Marilat Monday, everybody. So let's bring in our very own James Marilat, because it really does feel like we're getting mixed signals. And I kind of wonder if we're starting to get it on purpose, right? You never want to give anybody too much insight into what you're going to do, what you're going to, move up, move down, how that's all going to work out. But James, do you feel like we're getting some mixed signals? I'm going to play a clip here in a second, but with everything coming out of the owners' meetings today.
Yeah, we are. Now, you're giving him the benefit of the doubt that this is like some coordinated effort to put out some sort of smoke screen. I don't think they're playing chess. I think they're playing checkers. So I'm not going to give him that. You got Sean Payton saying one thing, George Payton saying another thing. I don't think it's outside the realm of possibilities. I think it's more likely than not that those two guys just aren't on the same page. So that's what I think's going on here. But listen, I like your optimism. I like the way you're thinking they're all Machiavellian here, trying to get people off the scent. I'm just not buying it.
Okay, well, if that's the case, Greg Penner then also lied because he was talking about how George and Sean, they spend so many hours together looking over film, talking with players, etc. That came out today. But realistically, the way that I'm kind of looking at this is Sean Payton this morning said that it was realistic. He actually called out Ian Rappaport on his report saying that they weren't probably going to move up. And he says it's realistic that they could move up. And then we have George Payton, who kind of talked to all the Denver media earlier. You guys can take a listen to this clip.
If there's a player you love, Sean talked about being in love with the player, and then you do whatever it takes to go get him, but you don't want to panic. There's going to be a really good player at 12. And unless we have a total consensus love for another player, we just stay at 12 or we move back.
So you stay at 12 or you move back is what I got out of that, unless you absolutely love a player, which agreed, like that makes sense. But just the fact that Sean was like, realistically, yeah, we're moving up. And he's saying 12 or move back. I'm like, there's nothing going on here that's making sense.
Yeah, I mean, look, they both kind of said that all options are on the table, which is what you expect to hear from them. But you can kind of read between the lines of what do they talk about first and what do they talk about, with a little bit more detail and a little bit more information. Sean Payton was all about, like you said, calling out Ian Rappaport. We can trade up. It's realistic, making sure that idea is still out there because that's probably the idea he wants. He wants to go up and get whichever quarterback it is that he loves. And J.J. McCarthy seems like the guy that everybody's talking about. So that's why he's all in favor of that. And George is like the opposite of a riverboat gambler. He wants to stand pat. He wants to trade back. He wants to just, not push all his chips into the table. He's the guy that folds after the single blind every time. It's like, geez, George, you're going to be at the table all night, but you're not going to win anything. That's what I feel like is going on here is Sean Payton's putting all the chips in, and George Payton is just fold. At some point, somebody's going to have to win because those are two different strategies.
Well, we've all agreed that Sean Payton is the one in charge of Broncos country right now at this very moment. So I would lean more towards him. And I thought it was interesting that he called out Arizona's GM and was like, it's a good time to be this guy because everybody is going to be looking to make some moves with Arizona.
Yeah, although that's interesting to me because Arizona's sitting there at 4, right? And there's 3 quarterbacks everybody loves, supposedly. Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels. So everybody wants to trade up to 4 to take J.J. McCarthy? Like, that's why? Like, 4 and 5 are both going to take receivers, right? Arizona's not taking a quarterback. They got Kyler. The Chargers aren't taking a quarterback. They got Justin Herbert. The Giants are sitting there at 6. They're taking one most likely.
Yep.
So I guess you could blow away one of those two teams and ensure that you get the 4th best quarterback in the draft. That I heard Cecil on with Mike and Stink this morning. He's talking about you got to get up to 3 because the Patriots want Jaden Daniels. He's not going to be there. You do whatever it takes to get there. That's the same jump from 12 to 3 that the Niners made for Trey Lance a couple of years ago.
Yep.
You're giving up your first-round pick this year, next year, and the year after to go get a guy that heading into the national title game nobody was talking about, and everybody was saying how great Michael Penix Jr. was. Now, one game and a bunch of workout in their shorts and T-shirts, and all of a sudden he's the 4th overall pick in the draft. That's nuts. That's bonkers.
Okay, so let's play GM real quick. You and I are both George Payton. For me, I'm willing to give up next year's first round, but that's it. Like after that, you're really starting to play with the future. And then say you throw in like a second or third, I don't care. But like next year's first is the only first I'm willing to give up to move into it. What about you?
No, I'm not giving it up because this team's going to be terrible. That's going to be a top 5.
Be terrible regardless.
Like, so they're giving up a number 12 this year, a top 5 pick last year, most likely.
Yep.
To go up and get a guy and to get JJ McCarthy. Like, listen, if they were getting Caleb Williams or they were getting Jaden Daniels or they were getting one of those guys that everybody thinks is for sure is going to be really good.
Yeah.
Do we know that JJ McCarthy is better than Bo Nix? Do we know they can't just trade into the top of the second round and take Michael Penix Jr. and get a guy that's just as good? I just think you're better off staying at 12, adding Brock Bowers, being terrible, getting a top 5 pick and taking Shadur Sanders next year. I think that's a better strategy than this path.
Is Brock Bowers the next Travis Kelce? Excuse me.
I think he has a better chance of being the next Travis Kelce or George Kittle than JJ McCarthy has of being the next great quarterback. I'm just not seeing it. I mean, listen, Michigan went undefeated, and so you can't question their strategy. They, run the ball a lot, but I also don't think Jim Harbaugh and the coaching staff up there is just letting a guy's talent go to waste. If JJ McCarthy was that great, why is he just handing the ball off all game, throwing 12 passes in a game? It just doesn't make much sense to me. Something's not adding up.
Have I told you my favorite rumor that's going on right now around the draft?
No.
Our producer, Joey, actually on the back end, is the one who told me this. And he's a Minnesota Vikings fan to everybody. So he says the Vikings are collecting so many draft picks right now because they want to trade up and go to the Chargers, get Justin Herbert to go to the Vikings, and then JJ McCarthy would go to the Chargers.
Okay, because Jim Harbaugh is that in love with this quarterback that
he said he was the best quarterback. Don't be surprised if he's the number 1 quarterback taken on the board.
Listen, if I'm a Vikings fan, I love that rumor. Yeah, you're getting Justin Herbert. Sign me up for that. And Justin Herbert is one of those guys that gets a lot of hype and doesn't get a lot of criticism, even though he hasn't won a playoff game yet, but has all the talent in the world. It's been a bit of a mess there in LA with the move and with that coaching staff, and now Harbaugh's there. Boy, you talk about a gamble if you're Jim Harbaugh. You're going to get rid of Justin Herbert and go with J.J. McCarthy just because you coached him in college. I think if I'm Jim Harbaugh, I'm looking at it saying, hey, I managed to win with that guy at the collegiate level. I'm not putting myself in the position where now I got to try and win with that guy at the pro level. I'm not as high on J.J. McCarthy as everybody else, because if you get in a time machine and go back 3 months, 3 months, nobody thinks he's a second-round pick. Now all of a sudden he's going 4th overall or 5th. That's an eye roll for me. I just don't get it, Rachel.
I always question. I mean, obviously there has to be rookies quarterbacks every single year, but I'm always somebody that leans more towards the veteran than the rookie because they've been there. They've done that for like a year, right? And so I know you have to have rookies because that's obviously how the game continues to grow. But every single time I'm like, do I really want the Broncos to go after a rookie QB that we don't know, like JJ McCarthy, right? The top 3 are a different conversation over just like a veteran quarterback. But then I also hate the idea of picking and playing another quarterback like they've done for so many years. I just feel like I'm so conflicted right now as a Broncos fan. And as somebody who has to cover this team, I'm like, I just don't even know which way I want them to go because it's going to be a disaster one way or another.
Well, they've tried everything other than taking a quarterback high in the draft, right? They went the rookie route with Drew Lock. They've gone with numerous veterans with, signing Teddy and Joe Flacco and all the rest of it. The blockbuster trade. I mean, they've tried everything other than, hey, spend a top 5 pick on a quarterback. So at least that's the one thing they've got left to try. But I have no interest in bringing in a journeyman quarterback. I just have no interest in mediocre. So most of the guys have already been signed.
Oh, there's nobody left now.
But there are 2 names I'll throw out at you. I just mentioned one, Drew Lock and Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson was the number 2 overall pick in the draft a few years ago. Do we know for a fact that J.J. McCarthy is better than Drew Lock, that he's better than Zach Wilson? You could get Zach Wilson for a 7th-round pick, spend the number 12 pick on Brock Bowers. They're not going to be just as good, if not better, this year if they do that. Nobody can convince me of that. They just can't.
We had posted that clip of James talking about Zach Wilson, and I was dying at the comments because there were people that were like, wait, I actually agree with James on this one thing, or there are people like, absolutely not. And it's just, I mean, if you can get a 7th round, why the heck not? But I don't think Zach Wilson is also the answer. It's like Daniel Jones, right? I kind of look at Daniel Jones and I'm like, this has been a disaster. I don't even know what team is going to look at him if the Giants really do move on from Daniel Jones.
Yeah, and the problem with Daniel Jones is he's got the big contract, right?
Yeah.
Zach Wilson, you're getting a rookie deal, so it's not gonna cost you anything essentially in draft capital.
Yeah.
I mean, you're sending him a pick that is most likely not going to make your team anyway. And then you've got a year to decide, hey, can this guy be the guy? And if he's not, you don't have to give him another deal. You're going to be bad this year. And then you draft Shedeur Sanders next year. Like, that just makes more sense to me than rolling the dice on J.J. McCarthy. And if he's not the guy, you're stuck with him for like 3 years because you don't have any other first-round picks.
Yeah.
You traded him away to get that guy. So you're going to find out he's not the answer this year. Going to be terrible. Be in the top 5 and sit there and go, oh, well, we sent that to Arizona, so we don't get a chance to draft Shedeur Sanders. I just think, man, if they're wrong on that, if they make that trade and they're wrong, you think the Russell Wilson deal set this franchise back.
Oh.
They will have traded 5 first-round picks and 3 second-round picks for Russell Wilson, Sean Payton, and J.J. McCarthy. That is the definition of overpaying. I mean, that would just be ludicrous to me.
So are you saying that you think the Denver Broncos are going to be the worst team in football next year?
They're in the conversation. I mean, Carolina is going to be in that conversation.
Because if you're getting Shedeur, according to everybody in the world right now, he's going number 1 overall.
Well, according to his father and his head coach, but he may, and I think the Broncos will be close enough. They may get the number 1 pick. They may earn that on their own, or they'll at least be close enough that it's not a huge leap. And then you start looking at, well, who would the other teams be that are there? If it's Carolina, are they going to punt on Bryce Young and draft Shedeur, or would they be willing to, trade you a little bit?
What would you do? Poor Bryce Young.
I want to see what Bryce Young does when he doesn't have Frank Reich and company as his head coach. I think he was put into a little bit of a bad situation. He also didn't have a ton around him, which I love that story coming out now too. Of the Broncos, they're going to go with Jarrett Stidham, but they got to add some pieces around him. I said that all year long about Russell Wilson, that he's got, he's trying to soar like an eagle and he's flying with turkeys, and nobody wanted to hear it. Now all of a sudden they got to upgrade from Adam Troutman. Yeah, no kidding.
It always cracks me.
It drives me nuts. Like, Russell Wilson was supposed to win with that crew, but now they got to go get some talent. Okay, well, but these are the same people that want to trade away all their first-round picks. Like, it doesn't make any sense. It's like nobody's looking 2 or 3 steps down the road. It's just one thing at a time. How do we get JJ? Okay, let's do that. Mortgage our future. And then you got nothing around him. What's he going to do? Throw 2-yard out passes to Adam Troutman? That's not going to work. That's not going to get him anywhere.